Brakat Yahweh, Brakat Yahushai, Brakat Yahweh, Brakat Yahushai, Brakat Yahweh, Brakat Yahweh, Bashim Yahushai, Bahashem, Rachak Wadash. God bless to the apostles and the elders of Great Most Home True Well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there, you Akim to Zadakim, that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. On the Pre-Shaman, this week's topic is going to be entitled Tariffs and Trade Wars Explained, Part 3, or something to that effect, or Part 4. I think this is going to be my fourth lesson on tariffs. But the first lesson I did a little over 2 months ago about the tariffs, I know there was a lot of news coming out saying this, it's going to be inflationary. And, I said tariffs don't have a direct correlation to a nation's inflation because tariffs do not increase the money supply. So far, that's held up because we've seen deflation. The price of gas go down. CPI went down. All these, it's been having a deflationary effect because with what's happening, it's been raising bond rates. When bond rates are up, people expect low inflation. It's been having a deflationary effect. I also mentioned it's a very powerful tool, and it's something that's been around, bro. I used Luke, the second chapter, in the first verse, where Caesar said, "Let's tax the world." U.S. taxes on imports have been around before Trump and this whole thing was happening, because tariffs act as a hedge. You have to use them to protect your own industry of your own nation. For example, if you have people that are, let's say, avocado farmers, right? The avocado farmers here, and again, if this is completely free trade, here cannot compete with, like, let's say, the avocado farmers in Mexico, who could probably produce it not only more effectively, but have cheaper laborers and these sorts of things. So they could put out a price that is far cheaper than what you domestically produce and what your farmers domestically produce. So what you do is you look at what it will cost them to produce that particular good, and what it will cost you to produce that particular good domestically, and then you create a tax on their imports to offset the difference that it costs for you to produce a particular good domestically. And that's what these tariffs do. They protect these farmers, they protect the unions. I think a good example is U.S. steel is not something you see anymore like that in America once China got into play. Remember, the Pittsburgh Steelers are called the Steelers because that's what Pittsburgh was known for. But they could not compete with China. And China does a lot of manipulative things. When Trump says they cheat, they steal, they do it, that's not just a fucking headline. They really do shit like that. Like, for example, like, if I'm creating a product and the moment it starts to generate revenue, I can see my same exact product copied, like, cheaply, and being sold as the original. And I can't sue them, but they can sue me. I can't compete with their manufacturing because they could use child labor law. They're not subject to child labor laws. Sheer volume of people, and there's really, they've been doing shit like that for decades. And people are saying, yo, this shit ain't fair. China don't play by the book. If you ever invested in a Chinese company, you know they cook the books. All right, like, if you ever owned a Chinese stock, they could cook the earnings. They could do a bunch of shit, man, to manipulate. And this is what the scripture says. The book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 26, verse 29. It says, a merchant shall hardly keep himself from doing wrong. Right, so merchant, people that sell, shall hardly keep himself from doing wrong. In other words, a merchant is going to always try and look for a particular advantage they could use, all right, even if it's immoral or things like that. And that's what China's been doing a number of years. I find it very interesting how they be like, people are going to pay the tariffs. Tariffs are going to hurt the consumers and all that shit. So why the hell does China has the most tariffs in damn near all the world, like the highest tariff rate, and they don't have inflation? So can it be inflationary in the sector? It definitely can. You know, it definitely can, but it doesn't mean your entire nation shall see inflation. In other words, it might be inflationary in a particular sector for a little bit, but it doesn't cause national inflation. If not, then why the hell would these nations pride themselves on it? So there's been a back and forth going with the whole tariffs and trade wars and situation like that, and Trump eventually put a 90-day pause on the tariffs because the bond market was going absolutely crazy. What are bonds? Bonds are IOUs at particular different interest, okay? So if you need money, you could borrow from me at a certain rate. That's a bond, right? Now, the further out we go, the higher the rate will be. Like if you want to borrow money from me for the next 30 years, I'm going to charge you a way higher rate than that because the future is not certain. But if you borrowed money for, let's say, 10-year, 5-year, okay, the closer the expiration to the IOU, the less I would charge you on rates. And this whole tariff situation has been causing market sell-off, which could possibly lead to a recession, which the Trump administration said they don't care about. They don't care about if there's a recession and the stock market is down, because that's like Wall Street. They was focusing on Main Street. Now, the problem was this. The bond market was going absolutely crazy because that would crash Main Street. You know what I mean? Because that affects the global market, the global rate. So they had to stay chill because what was happening? People were selling off bonds. You had hedge funds that were getting liquidated. You have nations that needed dollars. And I remember I did a lesson on BRICS last year, and I said BRICS is a payment system. They're more focused on payments. They don't want to dish the dollar. You can't just dish the dollar, brother. You can't just say, okay, let's use a new world reserve currency. Now that takes decades. The dollar accounts for over 50% of the world reserve currency. Now look what we see today, and I mentioned that through the spirit that dollars provide liquidity. This is why they don't use yuans and things like that or shit like that, because that's like what 4% of the world's currency, but traded in world currency. But the dollar is 51%. This gives you liquidity. And if there's a crash, you want to be able to exit and sell shit quickly and move out quickly, and that's what we saw. All right, this trade war crisis. Are people running for fucking rubles and or Russia's currency or BRIC currency? Fuck no. They want dollars. They want euros. They want the number one largest currency, then the second largest currency, pounds. And think about it like this, right? Because I said whoever cares less holds the leverage, and then eventually that all these nations will capitulate to America because America holds all the leverage. It consumes damn near 1/3 of the world's GDP. Like, you know what I'm saying? Every $3 that's being traded throughout the world and used in these sorts of things for commerce, $1 of that is the United States. It's huge. It's a major player, and Trump knows that. He's leveraging that. And so what? Now people in China, the man on the ground, they're saying, they want Xi to capitulate, because at some point the supreme leader is going to have to. He's going to have to come to the table. These people on the ground are talking about put away your pride and just come make an agreement with America. They can't last long with the tariffs, because think about it like this. You can say, okay, well, these other nations might just trade with themselves. Here's the shit with that. Let's say China goes to South America and trade in their currency, and then goes to South Korea and trade in their currency. The exchange rate of currency hurts you, bro. It hurt. Think about, like, if we could sell each other in the United States, cool. If you can sell somebody or cash out somebody in another country, that's cool. You don't want to use MoneyGram or Western Union. Why? Because you have to pay a higher fee to exchange those currencies. Okay, when you swap from your nation's currency to another nation's currency, there's a fee for that. But if you could go directly in dollars, that fee drops. It's the same shit with commerce throughout the world. Now, picture that when you're dealing with billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars. This is why these people flock for dollars, man. All right? And this dude Trump, he's putting a foot on China's neck because China has finessed the fuck out the world in terms of global trade for a hot minute, man. I'm talking about stealing your IP, reverse engineering that shit, and completely crippling you. Currency manipulation. This is a book of Proverbs chapter 20, verse 10, sticking with trade. It says, diverse weights and diverse measures, both of them are alike abominations to the Lord, right? So this is what happened when you manipulate currency or manipulate exchanges, that's what they were doing shit like that in the ancient world. And I'm going to some scriptures to prove that. The Most High is not with that, you know. And China will do things like that. They'll devalue their own currency. Okay, why do you want to devalue your own currency or make a weak dollar per se or a weak currency? Because it makes it, you have an advantage when you start dealing in trading on a world level. Just like I said, Trump wants a weaker dollar so he could compete with these other nations in terms of world trade. Now, the Chinese yuan has been tanking, you know? So you can say, okay, well, isn't that not in China's favor? They're getting their weaker currency, but here's a problem. You don't want the currency to tank too fast. If it tanks too fast, then you're going to have exit capital. People are going to start getting out of your country. So they've kind of put themselves in a hole. You know what I'm saying? They've put themselves in a hole. That hole is this. They're going to have to fucking capitulate, but if you capitulate, you're going to look weak. So, exciting times. These nations wish they didn't have to be subjective to the US dollar. They wish there was another way around it, but there isn't. There isn't, at least not for now. They're all going to kiss the ring, like my man Putin said. So they're going to kiss the ring to Trump. Jumping down to verse 23, Proverbs 20 and 23. Diverse weights are an abomination unto the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai, and a false balance is not good. And this is why the Lord just says stick to gold, stick to silver. But guess what? Even in the ancient world, they were manipulating gold and silver, mixing the gold with a different metal and shit, and devaluing it and changing up the measures. You know, why would they mix up the metals? Because when you mix up the metals with the gold, you know, it's going to make it more weighty, but you're getting less gold. All these things are abominations to the Most High, you see? But as we opened up, the merchant is going to always try to find a way, you know? Right now, trying to run over there to Europe. Because what Trump did was he pretty much excluded them out of world trade. He said, look, I'm willing to make a deal with everybody except China. And China tried to run to the EU, for example. BYD tried to sell their EV cars to Europe, and Europe was like, we're not taking it. Because the last thing you want is a nation to have China come in selling products at a damn near a fraction of what you cost, and you can't compete. Why don't you think in America we don't see the brand Neo, or we don't see BYD? Because BYD is a $10,000 EV vehicle. You think Tesla could compete with that? You think Mercedes, you think all these other different car companies can compete with that? They cannot compete with that, all right? Because they're subject to labor laws. They're subject to IP. They're subject to copyright. That's what he's talking about when he says that they cheat and all this type of shit. You know what I'm saying? Because they do that. They finesse. Leviticus 19 and 35 says, Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment, in metyard, in weight, or in measure. So that's not something we're supposed to do amongst ourselves in the nation of Israel. 36, Leviticus 19 and 36. Just balances, just weights, a just ephah, and a just hin shall ye have. I am the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai, your power, which brought you out of the land of Egypt. So the Most High is saying when we commune with trade with each other, it has to be just. You can't manipulate the currency, whatever you're trading in, you can't manipulate that. You're not supposed to finesse one another. I mean, fuck the nations. Do whatever you want with the nations, you know, but with us, we're not supposed to do that to each other. And let's find out what, because it only leads to conflict. It don't, you know? And now I think Trump was asked about, you know, what if it escalates to like some sort of physical war? He said, look, we got shit This is what Trump said. He's like, I don't know if that's what you mean, but if you're talking that type of war level, we got shit that people ain't even heard of. Like, we got some weapons, and it's true. This is how come America is very proud, but it's the largest military. It's the most powerful country in the world. It's just what it is. Like I said, I mean, the United States accounts for 64% of the world's army. Like, literally, if we went to war with Mars, 64% of that military army and stuff will be coming from the United States. The United States invests so much in their military. So strongest currency, strongest military, strongest that, and this dude Trump is using that to leverage the shit out of it. These other nations are looking back like, damn. They're gonna look back and reflect like, holy fuck, this country got us by the balls, man. Like, they could literally just stop the whole globe from community and trade. Why? Because we're using US dollars. So, hey man, that's why these nations eventually are gonna have to gang up and do what the scriptures say and pretty much stomp America out. You know? Amos 8:4 says, hear this, O ye that swallow up the needy, even to make the poor of the land to fail, saying, when will the new moon be gone, that we may sell corn, and the Sabbath, that we may set forth wheat? So they was waiting for the Sabbath to end so they could commune and trade. Okay, but is it just trade? Let's see what these niggas are doing. It says that we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small, yo, and the shekel great. You know, you know what that is? Making the ephah small and the shekel great. That's like when you open up a bag of chips. The bag look like it's a big bag of chips. When you pop the shit open, there's mad air and only a little bit of plantains. You know what I'm saying? A little bit of plantain chips. It says, and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit. So when can the Sabbath, you hear the conflict in that? When can the Sabbath be over so that way we can manipulate trade and shit and finesse and rip people off? That's wicked shit. That we may buy the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of shoes. Yea, and sell the refuse of the wheat. That's crazy, bro. What's the refuse of the wheat? The hanging parts of the wheat. The fallen parts of the wheat. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. We're seeing improper trade has been something that's been done throughout the history of time, man. You know what I mean? Once you got a merchant, that merchant is going to always find a way to try to finesse this shit. China, since that NAFTA thing has been around, our free trade agreement has been around, they have become a superpower with it, man. They become a superpower with tariffs and abusing labor laws and all this type of shit. So this guy's Trump said he's gonna go after it, and that's what we're seeing now. And of course, China's not taking it down, just lying on their back. You know what I'm saying? They fighting. They putting up their tariffs. They're doing things to crash the U.S. stock market. They're doing things to, some say to crash the bond market, but it's a mixture of both. It's a mixture of both because they do have to sell U.S. Treasury bonds because they need dollars right now. Because if dollars stop happening in circulations, if people are not getting dollars, your whole shit gets froze up. So they need those dollars. They need those trade. They need to be, so to get quick access to dollar, we talked about liquidity, right? You want the U.S. dollar because it provides liquidity. They're selling off U.S. treasuries. So not just China, but again, a lot of these hedge funds. It's not, I don't want to get too deep into it, but basically what happens is these hedge funds are leveraged up. They're using a lot of margin. And going back to the borrowing analogy, let's say I need to borrow, let's say I got to buy something from you for $100, but I only got 99. So, I say, you know what? Let me pay 99 now, and I'll pay $100 a week from now. That's not a relatively crazy margin, right? Pay back $1 in a week. But what these hedge funds will do is they'll say, all right, I need $1,000, but let me give you 99 now, and I'll pay the other. I need $1,000. I'll give you 100 now and pay the other 900 later. That is a contract on a futures, what they call a futures contract or an option play or futures. When you hear these types of terms, all right, meaning I'm going to borrow something now, but I'm going to pay it back in the future at a very leveraged percentage. Now, let's say it's time to pay and I don't have that. You're going to force sell me. I'm going to have to sell everything I have to cover what I can, to cover the deficit. Like, let's say I borrowed that 1,000, I only have 100, but when it's date to pay, I only have 500. I'm going to have to sell everything to make that difference. So what we're seeing happening is a lot of these people that bought bonds leveraged, okay, it was time to pay up and they didn't have it, so they were forced to close out their position. So a lot of things like that also factor into it. And that's what, when Trump was seeing that shit could lead to a fucking depression. Not no recession in the stock market, that's whatever. That's people that own assets, they're gonna get hurt, but whatever. The stock market goes up and down. But if that bond market was to crash, that shit was to lead to a depression. Revelation chapter 18 verse 11 says, "And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore." This is when America is destroyed, you see. But it says the merchants of the world, man. All right, why? America is the number one consumer, 1/3, eating up everything. So imagine you own a store and your number one buyer that's accounting for damn near a third of your revenue just said, "I'm leaving." You're going to try to get that person back. That person holds the leverage, not you, because they could find another seller. You see? So that's how come I said from Jump Street, like, yo, these nations are going to capitulate because whoever cares less holds the leverage. That's just how things go. It says, "For no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all fine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory and all manners of vessels of most precious wood and of brass and iron and marble." So all these different goods throughout the world. When America's gone, nobody's going to be buying that shit. That's how come they're mourning for it. But again, if another nation was to be destroyed, people wouldn't mourn as much as America being destroyed, because that's how motherfuckers make money. You know? It says, and cinnamon. Oh, man, I wanted to read on now more, but I'm out of time. But when you read more on down, it's pretty much saying all the different things that the merchants have sold and different goods and products they have done with America. Like I said, this guy Trump is leveraging the shit out of America's power. And through the spirit, again, this is what I was saying when that dude got in there. I was like, when Trump gets in there, this guy's a nationalist, and we needed this. We need this is how the world conflicts and shit take place. And you move the prophetic needle when you have individuals like this. Okay? So, exciting times. And I hope brothers are edified. Brothers and sisters are edified. I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahweh Shah, Ba'ashim Chakodash. That belongs to the apostles and the elders of great most true well. Salutations to the whole for the elect out there. You Akim to Zadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. Shalom.